Good evening and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Monday, July 9th, 2012. I'm Tony Paniagua. The Grand Canyon State is welcoming the University of Arizona's newest president. Dr. Ann Weaver Hart is the 21st person to assume this role and the first woman ever in this position. She has moved here from Temple University in Philadelphia, and she says she is very excited about this new chapter for herself and the university. Here's an introduction from reporter Fernanda Echavarri and photojournalist Stephen Riggs.
The new president of the University of Arizona has arrived. Ann Weaver Hart received a warm welcome this morning on campus, outside of what is now her new office. Dozens of students, professors, and university employees were there to meet the first woman to ever lead the U of A.
Wow, this is very exciting. Walking through, I want to have a hand for the band. That was really fun. Some of you may know that Randy and I met when he was in the pep band at Skyline High School in Salt Lake City. So, brought back old memories. I want to tell you that I am so excited to be here with you today, in part because of the challenges that we're all facing. In higher education in general, I was on a Pac-12 conference call on Friday, and the welcome I got from the presidents was that the word is that we're an endangered species and we won't be around for long. So I hope that's not true at the University of Arizona.
Hart was the president of Temple University in Philadelphia for 6 years and previously served as president of the University of New Hampshire. Although new to Arizona, she says across the U.S., state funding for education has gone down, so she expects that to be a challenge here as well.
We have to think about ways that we can be more active in laying out the case for higher education as other entitlement pressures face our state legislators, and become very good at articulating in our own way why this great university is such a critical part of the infrastructure of the whole state of Arizona. And that's one of the things we have to do. I think a second thing we have to do is recognize that we're a $2+ billion business in some ways. We might be not-for-profit, but we nevertheless have to constantly work to be better at the business of what we do by reducing the cost of doing business or the overhead and being able to spend a continually higher proportion of the resources we have on our core mission of teaching, research, and service.
She wants students to become better consumers of higher education so they can reduce the time it takes them to complete their degrees while increasing graduation rates for the university, especially when merit-based and needs-based financial aid is at an all-time low.
Through the University Foundation, are working very, very hard to raise private endowment funds for scholarships and financial aid. And as more of our graduates come to understand what a tremendous contribution financial aid was to their own success as students, I think we will be able to make the case for raising more and more funds for private support for financial aid.
If we were to look at her to-do list, we would see the word budget at the very top.
Clearly, the budget and our relationship with the state legislature and the governor are going to be important on that list. I need to get to know our leaders in the state and in our community and to be able to become a more successful advocate for the University of Arizona. We also are in a very intense 10-year plan with ABOR, and the University of Arizona's academic planning process needs to be accelerated as we work toward articulating a vision for this great institution and integrating it with the future of the state of Arizona, which will be very, very important. We also have some incredibly important top leadership roles that need to be filled. And so beginning searches for filling those senior vice president positions, and including the provost, who is the chief academic officer, is a major priority for me.
Hart says she has a pretty straightforward approach, which will help her get settled in and will be a big part of her leadership role as the U of A's 21st president.
I try to integrate that directness with an approach that recognizes people's needs and contributions.
Although Hart and her husband Randy have only been in Tucson for a few days, she says they're already getting acquainted with the weather, which is quite different from Philadelphia, and exploring the city.
You've got to love where you live. And we drove yesterday up to Mount Lemmon and had lunch there in the 71-degree heat, which was a great pleasure. And we look forward to getting to know the area. We've been out to the Desert Museum in the National Park, and this is an extraordinary place to live as well as an extraordinary university. We want to be part of that.
The Arizona Board of Regents announced in February that Hart was the sole candidate for the presidency of the University of Arizona. Former President Eugene Sander has said Hart's longtime experience as a university president would be an asset to the U of A. Hart has a 3-year contract with the university. Her annual salary is $475,000, which is part of a compensation package that's about $650,000, the highest in U of A history.
This is really nice.
Ann Weaver, Hart is replacing Dr. Gene Sander, who was about to retire last year when he was asked to step into the position following President Robert Shelton's resignation. We recently spoke to Sander about his many years of service at the university and his future plans. Andrea Kelly has that interview.
Joining us in the studio now is University of Arizona President Gene Sander. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andrea. Glad to be with you this morning.
Now, a year ago, you were looking at retirement. You'd spent 24 years at the University of Arizona. You were retiring as Dean of the College of Agriculture. Now you've been president of the university for a year because of an unforeseen circumstance with President Robert Shelton resigning a year ago. Can you summarize this past year as president?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. I was familiar with the university. That was one of the reasons I felt comfortable about taking this assignment, was that having been here for a fair length of time, I knew just about everybody at the university, and I knew a lot of people across the state based on my work as Dean of Agriculture. So that part of it I was familiar with. And the truth is that running a big college is not totally different than running a complete university. It's just, a little bigger, a little faster, a little more involved. So I felt that probably I could make a difference here. And I think during this past year, my goal was essentially to get this university ready for new leadership. And I think we've been able to do that. I've had a lot of help, too. I should tell you, there's some it's a splendid administrative team we have over there. Jacqueline Mock, our provost, has done just amazing work. Leslie Tolbert, the list could go on, so I won't bother to say any more. But without the people in place who knew me and I knew them and we worked together well, it wouldn't have been as possible to do the kind of things that we had to do in the short period of time that we had to do them. So it's been a good year. It really has.
What are some of those things that you say you had to do in the year? I know when you came in, you said you didn't just want to keep the seat warm. You actually wanted to continue some of the missions and the goals at the university.
Well, yeah. Of course, we needed to move ahead with things like working with the new UAHN board, which is newly appointed. I think that's going to make a big difference in terms of the overall success of our College of Medicine. Obviously, there were things to do to continue the College of Medicine work that was going on with the school up in Phoenix. One of the things that Dr. Mock and I worked very hard on, and that was to minimize the budget impacts that had occurred in the past several years. And then there was just the idea of letting everybody know across the state that we were still the state's land-grant university, that we were really serious about where we were going. And I think we managed to get a fair amount of that done. Once upon a time, I said I sure would like to be the president that would take us to the Rose Bowl. I didn't quite get that done, but maybe with a little bit of luck in the next couple of days, I'll be the president that presided over us winning the College World Series. And I think, wouldn't that be neat? I would be really excited about that.
Now, other than the unexpected challenge of being president for this past year, any other unexpected things that cropped up during your tenure as president for a year?
Not really. Nothing that we really didn't expect. Like I say, this was not a year of large things that happened. This was a year of incremental small things that occurred that sort of set us back on the track, I think, to be ready for new leadership to come along and take us to the next step. And I think that's the sort of thing that anybody who's in a leadership position hopes will be the case of the matter, that during your tenure, that the organization has either gained or maintained the strength that it had so that it's able to move forward without even sort of missing a beat as you go forward. University of Arizona is a great university. We are strong. We've got great people that work here. And so the idea that a university is president-centric, that just isn't so. That just isn't so. Don't get me wrong, great leadership counts. It really does. And we've got a great leader coming in, a very experienced woman who will be able to take us to the next step. But the point of the matter is this university is very solid. I think we're going to be able to continue forward. I know we will. Obviously, some issues that have to do with our budgets, how we go from one budget model to another budget model. Those are things that every university across the country, every public university is facing right now. And I think we're poised so that when Ann Weaver Hart gets here, well, we'll be able to continue right along without missing a beat.
And Ann Weaver Hart is coming in from Temple University,
That's
president
right.
of Temple.
That's right.
What has your transition process been like so far? Has there been much of a process?
Ann has had a rather difficult time in that Temple has not only recently appointed an interim president, and so consequently she's had a university to run in Philadelphia, and I've had one to run here in Tucson, Arizona. And we've been on the telephone a lot. We've had a chance to meet a time or two and just talk about things in general. Our philosophies are very much the same. So indeed, I think that many of the things that I'm deciding right now that are sort of things that obviously will carry over into her administration will not come as any surprise to her. And obviously with this new electronic communication that we have right now, that's very easy to take care of. It's just called push the button, copy Ann Weaver Hart, and she's very aware of what we're doing down here. And so I think that, and obviously I'm no more than a telephone or an email away. If there's any specific questions that have to do with something specifically that I can answer for her. But again, I come back to the idea. This university is not president-centric. There's a great team of people over there. Matter of fact, that team of people know probably more about some of the details of the university than I know about. It's just the way that it essentially works. And so I think we're set in a way that when Ann gets here the first week in July, that we'll be in shape, ready to move forward.
We've got just about 30 seconds left. I want to ask you what challenges she may be facing when you leave and she comes in. What's on her plate? What are the big issues?
Well, I think the big issues will be the continuance of the changes that have to do with our medical school, how that relates to the new UAHN board, how that in turn relates to the enterprise that we have up in Phoenix. Getting to meet the people in Arizona, getting to know the legislature. In other words, she will have to do all the things that I had to do 25 years ago, but she's a very capable woman, and this surely will work out.
Great. Well, thank you for coming in a few times throughout the year, and we really appreciate hearing from you as president of the University of Arizona.
Andrea, it's been my pleasure.
Millions of people in the United States are trying to shed a few pounds, and losing weight has become a multi-billion-dollar industry in this country. The effort is often difficult and frustrating, but there are valuable local resources that can help. The University of Arizona Arthritis Center is putting together a free presentation this Wednesday called The Healthy Weight Philosophy. Joining us with the details is Dr. Michael Hewitt. He is the Research Director for Exercise Science at Canyon Ranch Health Resort here in Tucson. Thank you for being here.
Tony, it's a pleasure to be here.
So what is the Healthy Weight Philosophy all about?
Well, this country is struggling with an obesity crisis. It's a pandemic not just here, around the world, frankly. And we can do something about decreasing the overweight in our culture. But many of the methods that we follow are not really the best.
So what do you want to tell the average person if they are facing this dilemma, trying to lose a few pounds or maybe a lot of pounds, and about also maintaining that weight off? Because we were talking prior to this interview about how that sometimes becomes the bigger of the two challenges.
Weight loss is really quite simple. Difficult, but simple. In theory, if you consume more calories, absorb more calories than you burn, you're going to gain weight. If you expend more than you absorb, you're going to lose. Very, very simple. In practice, tremendously difficult. But every diet, virtually from the best to the worst, something like Weight Watchers, which is very well established, to the cabbage soup diet, which is pretty horrific, both of them will result in weight loss. But maintaining that weight loss is the challenge.
And what are some of the steps to try to keep that weight loss off?
Well, the failure rate, frankly, for maintaining that weight loss runs from 95 to 99% over a 5-year period. It's pathetic, frankly. And so whatever one does to lose the weight, they must be prepared to do indefinitely to maintain the weight.
And what are some of those ways to maintain that weight? Ways, not weight, to maintain off that weight?
Well, the big thing is not to sabotage what your healthy weight should be. The premise behind healthy weight is that your body is essentially perfect. It's nice to be told that your body is perfect, but Tony, your body's perfect. Perfectly adapted to what you've been doing for the last 6 to 18 months. You have enough strength and endurance and flexibility to do what you usually do, and your weight reflects what you've done.
And what do you want to say about dieting, exercise, and overeating? 3 challenges or 3 big areas that we have to cover when we talk about this topic.
So if your body is perfectly adapted, you can sabotage its ability to sustain that healthy weight by 3 saboteurs. Dieting itself, we believe dieting causes weight rebound. Now, for years we didn't really understand this, but we now know that if you go on a diet, it changes your absorption capacity, it changes your metabolic rate, your lean body mass, makes it harder for you to stay in the weight. Diets, as I said, have a horrific failure rate. They're really not part of a healthy weight philosophy.
And exercise and overeating?
Exercise is critical. I'll go out on a limb and tell you in my 30 years of doing this kind of work, I've yet to meet the first person who has permanently lost weight without physical activity. Temporarily, yes, of course, but if you don't move your body, it really doesn't matter what you weigh. And that exercise should be different for different goals. If a person has a relatively low lean body mass, they're better served by doing a lot of strength training to build up their lean mass and their metabolism. If their lean mass is quite good, then the cardiorespiratory exercise is more effective.
So that leads us to body mass index or height weight charts. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you go to the doctor's office and you see those, but you say to yourself, wow, I'm overweight or maybe underweight, but that also is not really a good indication of what the body ultimately will look like.
Body mass index is everywhere. When we talk about the obesity crisis, it's all based on body mass index or height weight charts, which are a similar but simpler version. The problem with height weight charts and the problem with BMI is that they don't differentiate weight that is fat from weight that is lean. And lean body mass is everything in the body but the fat, the muscle, the bone, the organ, the water, the metabolically active tissue. And the more you have within reason, the better. But if you have a high lean body mass, as an athlete would, or someone who is simply larger, you're going to appear to be overweight on BMI or body mass index or height weight charts simply because you have a lot of muscular tissue. And you're simply not in trouble at that point, but you look as if you are. Conversely, someone who is under lean is someone who doesn't have enough lean body mass, and they appear to be wonderful by height weight charts or BMI, but in fact they may have too much fat because they simply have too little muscle. Exercise can fix that.
All right, so if somebody's watching this right now and they want to lose, let's say, 10 pounds, what would you say to him or her to get started and to try to keep it off?
Well, the first thing, of course, is that being fit is far more important than being light. If they're looking for long-term health, having a good level of fitness but overweight is far better in the long term than being an ideal weight but not being fit. But if they'll do that, if their goal is to lose those 10 pounds for cosmetic or health reasons, obviously they will sabotage themselves if they overeat. And overeating is rampant in our society because we are encouraged to purchase the larger portion of virtually everything. And frankly, eating has become our national pastime. It's not baseball, alas, go Wildcats, but it's not baseball, it is overeating. And so avoiding that saboteur is critical. Dieting itself is worthwhile to avoid also because dieting causes weight rebound and some kind of exercise is critical. But the first step might be to learn their lean body mass. If they can learn lean body mass by some kind of a body composition test, whether it's the electronic scales or a pinch test at the local health club or something along those lines, they can determine whether their lean mass is adequate and they're better served by doing cardio exercise, or their lean mass is low and they really need a strength program.
So we only have about 30 seconds, but is a lot of this psychological? People just have to rethink the way they live their lives?
I don't know if it's psychological or not, it may be societal, but we are certainly driven to be sedentary and we are driven to consume food. That part has to change. If we can simply be more proactive on eating healthfully, if we can let the good foods phase out the bad ones and we can move, we can maintain a healthy weight.
Okay, Dr. Michael Hewitt, thank you very much for joining us this Wednesday night at University Medical Center. For more information, you can contact the University of Arizona Arthritis Center. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's been 40 years since the United States approved Title IX as part of the Education Amendments of 1972, which would eventually open many doors for high school and college female students. Tonight, we hear about the historic legislation from the University of Arizona's Deputy Director of Athletics, as well as an Olympic silver medalist and former UA athlete. Caitlin Harrington has that interview.
Joining me in studio today is Rocky LaRose. She is the Deputy Director of the UA Athletics Department, and Lacey Niemeyer-John. She is a former U of A athlete as well as an Olympic silver medalist. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you.
Ladies, I have you both here because it is the 40th anniversary of the Title IX legislation that just happened on June 23rd. And the Title IX legislation has had a big impact on both of your lives, which we will discuss in just a moment. But Rocky, could you tell our audience a little bit about what Title IX is?
Sure. It's actually very simple. It's 37 words that were passed by Congress back in 1972 that said an institution cannot discriminate on the basis of sex if they receive even $1 of federal funding. But we like to say the interpretation is that girls get to play. And Ann Richards said that. She was the governor of Texas when she reported that.
And Rocky, you played softball here later in the 70s, but can you talk to me a little bit about your high school athletics journey and how you evolved that in college once the legislation had passed?
Sure. Well, Title IX passed while I was in high school. So when I started out my high school years, we had very few opportunities. I think it was archery and tennis that we were able to play. But by the year I graduated, my senior year in high school, they had a full complement of varsity sports, including women's basketball and volleyball. And when I came to the U of A, I felt like I had hit the lottery.
Lacey, we talked prior to this interview about the impact that Title IX had on your life, and you did say it was life-changing. Can you talk to us about also your high school and college athletic career?
Definitely. Basically, I got into sports when I loved swimming, so that kind of put my foot in the door. But the reason I continued swimming was that I had a dream of being a college athlete. I wanted to have a college scholarship and to be able to have my school paid for. And because of Title IX, I was able to stay focused on my career and on my swimming, trying to progress, and fortunately I ended up here at the University of Arizona, and I did it, and I was able to achieve that dream. And through that process of being a student athlete and having that opportunity, it really has changed my life. I was able to make it to the highest level of my sport, making it at the Olympics in 2008, and standing on the podium, being presented with an Olympic medal, knowing that all that hard work was because I just had the opportunity, and being able to achieve that dream all started with the women years and years before me.
Rocky, in addition to being able to play sports and having funds being equally distributed to women and female and male sports, it also gave you a chance to have the job position that you're in now. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I hit the University of Arizona, Title IX was just really coming into effect, and I was one of the, I like to say I was one of the first generation of American women that got to compete at the collegiate level. And from there, all sorts of doors flew open. At the time, we didn't know we could aspire to even be collegiate athletes, let alone be perhaps an athletic director of a department. So to see those doors fly open, definitely I took advantage of it, but I am a Title IX baby. That's why I'm sitting here today.
Lacey, although you're not competing in the sport anymore, can you talk to us about how you're still staying involved with swimming and future swimmers?
Yeah, so I go around and I work with the Fitter and Faster Tour, teaching swim lessons and doing swim clinics around the country. And basically it brings Olympians and World Championship athletes to local communities, and we basically share our stories. And the main message that I try to give out is that if you have the opportunity, go for it. And with Title IX, women have an opportunity. They have an opportunity to achieve their goals no matter how big they are. And sharing that with middle school and high school young female athletes, I think, is crucial to helping them develop their dreams and goals.
Rocky, we have about a minute left. In the next 20 years or so, can you foresee the future, well, if you had to predict the future of female athletics and where it's going to be going from here, what would you hope to aspire in that?
Well, I think they're going to grow tremendously. Already we're getting more and more television exposure. ESPN for softball, for instance, it's actually has ratings. So I think we'll see more and more publicity and more media exposure for our women's athletics.
And Lacey, same question for you. What would you hope to see in the next 20 or so years in women's athletics?
Again, just more women taking advantage of this opportunity and bigger dreams and bigger accomplishments.
Lacey and Rocky, I thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bees are some of the hardest working and most admired insects in the world, and a growing number of human beings are reconnecting with these little creatures. In tonight's video postcard from photographer and editor Jay Blaine, we take you to Tohono Chul Park in northwest Tucson. Experts there recently held a variety of beekeeping demonstrations.
I thought we would start with the bees themselves. And bees are, to my knowledge, one of the only insects that doesn't kill or hurt as it takes its food. It actually makes ecosystems stronger. It's Pollinator Awareness Month. One of my loves is keeping honeybees. And so we were talking about the art of keeping bees in an urban environment. You can send away for honeybees through the mail. And they come in these packages. I also love this because you can see what seem to be the scout bees. You can see how uniform they are and cohesive they are. They'll bring back the information about what options there are for the new colony. The focus here was more on how do I do it in my own yard. And then here you can see where the mesquite honey is stored, and here where the pollen is. I think the thing that did surprise me is how many people wanted to start their own hives.
Wow.
You can get more news and information on our website, azpm.org. To comment on any story you saw tonight, click on it online and go to the bottom. We can also be reached via Facebook and Twitter. Coming up tomorrow night, there is a huge need for foster parents in our community, and Tucson Medical Center is working on a major project. It's a multi-million-dollar orthopedic and surgical tower. I'm Tony Paniagua. From all of us at Arizona Public Media, have a great night.